Good evening, everyone. I'm Roger Pines, dramaturg at Lyric Opera, and I want to welcome all of you to our second Discovery Series session of the season, which is devoted to Verdi's Simon Boccanegra. Is everyone's cell phone turned off? Please make sure. I see people grabbing for their cell phones. Good. Let's turn those phones off. Okay. Because Thomas Hampson and Frank Lopardo were both feeling less than 100%, and they have their next performance coming up on Saturday, they both feel compelled to rest as much as possible. So they send their deepest regrets to all of you that they are unable to be with us tonight. All of us at Lyric Opera are exceedingly grateful to tonight's guest for his willingness to go it solo with me. And I am honored to be speaking to him about an opera that's very dear to his heart and which has brought him great success internationally. It is increasingly rare these days to feel genuinely privileged in witnessing the work of a particular artist on stage. But everyone who heard our Boris Godunov last season and last night's opening of Simon Boccanegra realizes what a privilege it is to watch and listen to Ferruccio Furlanetto on stage. Once you've seen him in these two operas and in so many others, you have a hard time imagining the characters he's playing being acted and sung by any other performer. As with his Boris, Verdi's Fiesco is one of Mr. Furlanetto's signature roles. In this portrayal, he is operating at a level of vocal prowess and interpretive authority that is unique today and unsurpassed among basses of at least the past half-century. The Met, Vienna, La Scala, Covent Garden, Berlin, and Madrid are among the houses where he has portrayed Fiesco, and you can see him on DVD in this role in the productions of the Vienna Staatsoper, La Scala, and Covent Garden. His performances in Verdi's leading bass roles have been hailed as definitive in Don Carlo, Attila, Nabucco, I Vespi Siciliani, Macbeth, Forza del Destino. The rest of his repertoire remains extraordinarily diverse. Consider that among his recent successes have been L'Italiana in Algeri of Rossini in Vienna, Masset's Don Quixote in Madrid, Moscow, and St. Petersburg, Eugene Onegin of Tchaikovsky in Vienna and Salzburg, Faust at the Met, and South Pacific at the Vienna Volksoper. When he sings Boris at the Bolshoi in Moscow about a month and a half from now, he will be the first Italian to have sung that role at that theater, the Bolshoi, and also at the Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg. Also later this season, he will be in San Diego for a role that he has championed with great success in recent years, Thomas Becket in Pizzetti's Murder in the Cathedral. He'll then head to the Vienna Staatsoper for a recital and to Covent Garden for his celebrated portrayals of Fiesco and King Philip II. Please join me in welcoming back to the Discovery Series a truly great artist, Ferruccio Furlanetto. Simon Boccanegra here in 17 years, so I think my handy-dandy 60-second synopsis might be in order. Ferruccio, I mean, this is really a tough one to do in 60 seconds, but I will try. In 14th century Genoa, the corsair Simon Boccanegra is persuaded by his friend Paolo, chief of the plebeian party, to accept nomination as the city's new doge. Simone hopes that the position will make him an acceptable husband for Maria Fiesco, a young patrician woman who was born from an illegitimate child. Maria dies, the child disappears. Jacopo Fiesco, Maria's father, despises Simone as his daughter's seducer. When Simone becomes doge, Fiesco is exiled. 25 years later, Fiesco is living in Genoa under an assumed name and is the guardian of another young patrician woman, Amelia Grimaldi. Simone is astonished to discover that Amelia is his own long-lost daughter. Amelia rejects Paolo as a suitor, he attempts to abduct her, and Simone suspects him of the crime. Paolo poisons water that is drunk by Simone. Doge reconciles with Fiesco and blesses the union of Amelia and the man she loves, Gabriele Adorno, whom the dying Simone proclaims the new Doge. Is that okay?
There are 400 episodes.
Therefore, it's a tough one. Do you remember the first time that you heard Simon Boccanegra?
Did they sang?
No, that you actually heard the piece.
Sang by others? No, I don't remember. Maybe, no, actually, no. All the production that I heard because I was in it.
Do you find that Italians don't necessarily grow up with this piece the way they grow up with Traviata, Trovatore,
No, in Italy it's played now since Abbado did take it back.
I was going to ask you about that.
In these 80s, early 80s, I think. Or even before with this magnificent production of Giorgio Strehla.
At La Scala, correct?
In La Scala, yes. And ever since, it's an opera that it has been done more and more because it's one of the most refined and beautiful Verdi opera.
What do you think? We had talked about that production the first time. We talked about Simon Boccanegra. So I'm curious what that production gave the piece. Because it's a production that you've done, correct? Did you do the last?
The last three?
Yeah.
The last three performances of the Strehla production has been done in Vienna when Abbado was there as a chief conductor and general artistic director. And after that, unfortunately, the production was dismantled and thrown away. I did also some other performances of it in Barcelona in the years before. And it's such a pity because I don't see what would have been the problem, to rebuild it and to repropose it as it happened. We were talking a few minutes ago. For instance, in 2004 in Rome, I did the Visconti Don Carlo, and it was totally rebuilt, but exactly the way it was, and it was so beautiful. And they were painted scenery.
It was a production that was 50 years old.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. And it was also in Covent Garden, I remember.
Sure.
And it's funny. If they did rebuild and they found the artisans able to paint properly the set as it was, why not do the same with the Strehla Boccanegra or the Macbeth? Macbeth was sensational as well.
What did that production, though, contribute to the piece that sort of woke people up to what the possibilities of the piece really could be?
There are some mysteries in this profession that is very hard to explain sometimes. I mean, a good historical production should be there forever. Let's think about, for instance, Zauberschlöte in Salzburg by Jean-Pierre Ponel. Nobody will ever be able to do something better than that, like is Italiani Nageli, for instance. And you will always find some artistic director that one day will throw away these masterpieces to make plays to some ugly new productions, especially these times.
I am so astonished by the beauty of this music in Simon Boccanegra. If you were speaking to how many of you, when you come to the lyric opera production, which of course you all are going to do, how many of you will be hearing Simon Boccanegra for the first time? A lot of you. Okay. So, what I'm curious about is, if you were going to emphasize to a newcomer to Simon Boccanegra about the lyrical content, the lyrical beauty of this piece, because it really does equal Rigoletto and Trovatore Traviata in that respect, what passages, what scenes do you think you would mention just to make it clear to those people unfamiliar with the piece just how beautiful it is?
First of all, it's important for somebody who comes to Boccanegra for the first time not to expect Traviata or Rigoletto.
Well, at least as far as what it's about.
Well, yeah. First of all, because I heard a friend of mine told me that last night two people next to him left the show because he said, well, it's not Rigoletto.
That's a crime. That's a crime.
It's not Rigoletto, and it's a Verdi belonging to his old age, so very, very refined, deeper than before. We have lessons of Papa, and the characters are so well designed, and they are not just purely vocal. These are acting characters. Of course, there is a very demanding vocal part in it, and it's fundamental since we are in opera. But it's so beautiful to have beautiful music, beautiful singing, beautiful phrases, and acting. Then it's really a sensational form of theater that we don't have in many other opera, where you just, if you dig a bit in some sensitive part of the character, that's it. I mean, how you die, how you... Boccanegra is a masterpiece. Of course, you need to be prepared to that. It was hard to digest this story of last night of these people leaving, because it wasn't Rigoletto, because it's a waste. So I feel sorry for them, really, because Rigoletto is sensational. Let's be clear. It's a sensational opera, a sensational piece. Everything is absolutely outstanding. But this is another sphere, as another dimension. The characters are very much digged into their souls. I prefer it very much.
I know you made a point of exploring a lot of historical background when you were preparing to sing Baris for the first time. It's possible to do that with Simon Boccanegra because Boccanegra actually lived, but did you see as much of a point in doing that?
Boccanegra is very much romanced. I mean, Boccanegra, of course, existed, but he wasn't a pirate at all. And he was coming, yes, from the simple people, and he was probably the first democratically elected doge in the Republic of Genova. And but there is a lot of romance in it. So, of course, in those times there was a social fight, as it comes out in the prologue. The aristocrats, of course, were leading normally the power. It was the first time that they had to give up. And Fiesco, for instance, had to lose all his wealth, run away, hide in the country, change name. It wasn't hard. It wasn't easy at all, of course. But I mean, it's very much romanced.
Although the real Boccanegra was poisoned, wasn't he?
No, it wasn't poisoned, and it wasn't apparently as human and as intelligent as it comes out in the piece.
Clearly, a 25-year-old bass isn't ready for a role like Fiesco or like Boris, for that matter. When we talked last year, you mentioned to me how important you thought your background in Mozart had been in working your way up into the heavier repertoire. And I think that is incredibly important and something that young singers everywhere should absolutely be thinking about. So could you talk to us about how Mozart sort of sustained you vocally when you took on the heavier, when Don Carlo, Simon Boccanegra, the other Verdi operas?
I was extremely lucky to, of course, when I started this profession, I mean, to approach the world of opera, Boccanegra and Fiesco aria was the first thing I ever learned for a competition or for an audition. And but then, being young and being in full adoration of Cesare Siepi, who was the greatest Giovanni and doing a lot of Figaros, I wanted to follow his tracks. So I started to approach and to sing more and more Mozart. Of course, I had here and there some excursion in other repertoire, but basically for, I would say, 25 years, I sang mostly Mozart, which was the greatest gift I could receive, because There is no other way to sing Mozart unless you use your natural vocality, what you received by your nature. Because otherwise, if you start to cover, to create sounds, you will never be able to play the recitatives and to become the character, because the character is built through the recitatives mostly. And so the word must be clear, must be immediate. Everybody should understand in the audience without looking the subtitles are there. And 25 years doing this kind of work was so amazing, was an extremely good medicine. Because when I reapproached the Verdi, or then Boris, and etc., the voice grew up physiologically with me through Mozart, and when I came back to Verdi, I was ready for the big step, and it was much easier, let's say 25 years after than 20 years before, for instance. And even now, I'm not exactly a teenager, roles like Attila, like Hernani, this kind of hybrid where you have the aria purely for bass and the cabaletta purely for baritone, I can manage it much, much better than 20 years ago because I am owning my vocality in a much different and better way than that.
You have a role in Simo Boccanegra that begins with the best known music in the entire opera and probably the best known of all bass arias written by Verdi, Il Lacerto Spirito. So let me ask you, is it a blessing or is it a curse that you're starting your role off with this very dramatic recitative and this?
But it happens in many other roles. Hernani Silva comes in with the aria and the cabaletta, the famous baritone cabaletta. And Procida comes out and immediately sings Sotto Palermo and cabaletta. So Fiesco, after all, is quite easy. You come out, you sing something that is purely written for bass, with a beautiful, intense recitative if you want, but then you go immediately into the prayer, which is very much cantabile, and it's pretty easy also.
What in that aria is most important to you to communicate to your audience in terms of character?
Everything, because it is written, but it's written in this specific way. I mean, the very beginning, you have the desperation of this father coming out of his palace. He just lost his daughter. Of course, he knew that she had a little child and she disappeared. So, I mean, it's a very difficult situation, and he's full of rage and hate towards Boccanegra because he thinks that he is the cause of all this trouble. And immediately after this sudden description, there is a blasphemy. He is talking to the Madonna and saying, "How could you allow this bastard to do so and so?" And then immediately he repents. And this is a bit funny. And he out-absolves himself immediately. He say, "Okay, she forgives me." because my soul is destroyed by the situation, and then he goes into the prayer where he gives a sort of farewell to the daughter. And so I wouldn't say that there is a very specific moment where you should point out something. Are phases that are all very, very important if you want to view the proper image.
The big question is, do the directors that you do this opera with, do they allow you to do in that aria what you want? Or are they asking you for outrageous blocking and stuff that just
The time of the outrageous thing is gone. I mean, I have a blacklist. I have a blacklist, and when they offer me a contract, no. So sometimes, I mean, 3 years ago I was caught in a bad situation, in a Macbeth in Paris with a disgusting production.
Of course, we all have to go online immediately.
With a disgusting production, conducted disgustingly also, directed hopefully, and with a good cast. And it was, I trusted the theater because in the past I always did beautiful things that when I signed the contract, the director wasn't yet decided. And then I found myself in a situation where, and this is the best aspect of this profession today, we sign contracts 3, 4, even 5 years before. And then you find yourself in a situation that you have only 2 possibilities. Go and lose everything, lose all of the money, lose 1.5, 2 months of your artistic life, because at the last moment it will be extremely hard to replace an engagement like that, or stay for the money and feeling like a prostitute. I stayed. And I will never forgive who compelled me to do so. And it was one of the most depressing times ever. And I mean, after that, my blacklist is a kind of Bible.
You also did, besides the Macbeth, you did an infamous Boccanegra there, which I actually saw. And one thing that I remember...
3 awful Boccanegras.
3 awful Boccanegras.
One after the other. I mean, one worse than the other. The first one was stupid, dark, black, and probably did cost $500 and everything. The second one, I was dressed like the General Custer. And the third one is the one you saw, where I was a kind of Berlusconi.
There was an enormous poster.
Yeah.
Which just had you in a business suit and your name on it. It just said Fiesco in enormous letters, like a political.
It was because in that time we had elections in Italy. And there was, of course, a big clash in the 2 parties. And of course they took advantage of this situation just to have, I mean, the political issue in Boccanegra is just that big. Just in the prologue for how much? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's it. Then is a story of hate and love, and that's it. And politics was from the beginning to the end. I was a kind of